Hi, everyone. Great to see you. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Jamie Christensen. I help Colaberry with their marketing, and hopefully some of you have been to these sessions in the past. We have them about every 2 months, and Jackie is our wonderful coordinator. And often I bring some of my colleagues in, like tonight, to help talk on topics that are of interest as you're looking to either find your first job in data analytics or to move up or just to find a different job. So I'm really excited tonight. In the last couple sessions that we've had, one thing that kept coming up was the topic of recruiting. And so tonight I've brought in a really good friend of mine, Jolene Risch, who owns her own recruiting firm, Risch Results. And she is here to talk to you about what a recruiter looks for when looking at candidates. And then we have a bonus. We have Nicolette Barrett here. And Nicolette is a good friend of Jolene. And when you want to get hired, Nicolette is your lady. And Jolene, I'm going to let you give a little more detail on Nicolette as well. But team, as you know, if you've been to these before, we want to keep this really conversational. Jackie and I will be watching the chat. Raise your hand, whatever you want to do to get attention. Jolene's prepared to talk, but also to ask questions. And we, this is going to be one of the fastest hour and a half of your week at least. So again, Jolene and Nicolette, thank you so much for doing this. And Jolene, I'll turn it over to you.
First of all, there's a very high level presentation here. And I think what I'll do is I'll go through a couple pages, but then I'll take it off so we can see more people, because I think that is more enjoyable to see faces than a presentation. But what I wanted to, when Jamie said, she said the topic is what recruiters are looking for. So I own a recruiting firm, and what we do is we are hired by companies that are looking for people. So I definitely know what hiring managers and companies and recruiters like my staff, and I have a really, really clear idea of what they're looking for. Even though we we help companies in a number of different positions, I can tell you, we can talk definitely about, some of the areas that recruiters are looking for, no matter what you're applying for. The reason I asked Nicolette to join me is because I often get the question, well, how do I prepare for finding a job, and what do I do to look for a job? And definitely we'll talk a little bit about resumes. So Nicolette's business is really helping people find that job. I'm working with companies to find the people. She's working with the people to find the job. So we kind of come from it, in two different angles. And I will tell you that, it's really rare that I don't refer people to Nicolette, because she has so much experience in this area. But what I wanted to just go through briefly is sort of what we're going to talk about in general. So, the question that you have is of course what recruiters are looking for. Well, first of all, let's start with, why is it important to know what recruiters are looking for? We're going to also talk just a little bit about the job market, because I've been in the recruiting industry for 15 years, and I'll tell you, it's just the last, basically 3.5 or so years, there have just been constant changes in the labor market. And so I'm going to give you sort of a glimpse of what it's looking like right now, and what some people are predicting for the near term. And then definitely Nicolette is going to be talking a lot more about how to tailor your resume and cover letter for the jobs that you want to apply for, and also how to prep for an interview, because we obviously interview candidates all day, every day. And so there's definitely things that I see that I wish I could prepare them better, but it's not really my job to prepare people coming for an interview, right? Because I'm representing the company. So there are definitely things that I would want to talk about. I want to start with, why is it important to know what recruiters want to see? And I'm going to talk about a few things, and then I definitely want Nicolette to jump in. First of all, it's really important to know what recruiters want to see in you, because it helps you know how to tailor your resume, how to tailor your LinkedIn profile, how to tailor the application, right? Because depending on the job, you might have some changes in your resume. And also, if you know what a recruiter is looking for, you have a competitive edge over other candidates, right? Knowing what recruiters want to see gives you a competitive edge over candidates who don't have the knowledge, haven't taken the time to have the knowledge, haven't done any research. So you already have that competitive edge. And also, the bottom line is that knowing what recruiters want to see, it's going to improve your chances of getting hired, right? So ultimately, knowing what a recruiter wants to see in a candidate can improve your chances of getting hired by doing like really, really simple things, tailoring your resume, highlighting your strengths. There's a lot of ways that you can tailor what you're going to be showing the hiring manager or the recruiter by making some very slight changes from application to application. But Nicolette, you advise people all the time on this topic, because you often talk to people who might be looking at a few different kind of jobs, right? They are maybe related, but they're in different industries, or, it could be the same type of job, but in different industries. It could be sort of a slightly different job. It looks different in one company than another. So just how does it help a candidate to know what a recruiter wants?
It's really beneficial. So thank you for that, Jolene, because you really hit it on the head. A lot of times people take one resume and they apply to a lot of jobs that they themselves think they can do, but they're not actually thinking from a perspective of the recruiter or the hiring manager. So you got to think about, what do they want to see from me, not what I think I want to do. And it's going to take some work to actually do it, because sometimes people do one resume and they don't want to do any work. They just want to take that one and apply to a lot of companies. I had a speaking engagement earlier today. There was a young lady who is in education. She used the same resume for 20 different jobs and didn't get not one call back. And I said, well, honey, it's not you, it's your resume, because I'm sure you have the skill set, but that resume is not resonating with the actual recruiter, even the database at that point, because you talk about the ATS system. I call them the resume robot eaters. So they will spit your resume out if it's not even speaking to what the recruiter is looking for. So it's very important to talk about what it is in your resume that will resonate with that job so that they can call you in. So you hit it on the head. It takes work. Finding a job is a job in itself, especially if you want the right job.
Yeah, that's good. So obviously it's really important to think about what recruiters want to see and think about it from the perspective that, it depends on the job, the company. You have to do that research. But let's kind of back up a minute and talk about the job market, which, like I'm constantly reading. I don't know how many of you read articles on the labor market and what's going on. Like if you read articles on unemployment or what's happening with job creation every month and how many new jobs in the US are being created every month. So this is like my favorite topic that I definitely nerd out about. So last year was really, really interesting. So raise your hand, and if I can't see your face, maybe it'll show me that little yellow or brown or white or whatever color hand that you have. Raise your hand if you remember hearing the term last year, the Great Resignation. So when we were going through COVID, it was really interesting because on the one hand, unemployment was going way up. A lot of people were getting laid off from their jobs, right? But it also was a little bit dependent on industries, okay? But in general, we saw unemployment, so people who were not working, leaving the workforce go way up during, so in 2020, right? Probably mid-2021, and certainly in 2022, what was going on was, in some ways, the labor market was stabilizing, right? Like people were back to work for the most part, whether they were working from home or not, but they were, for the most part, they were back to work. But then what was happening was people had just gone through this life-altering experience, right? This world-changing, life-altering experience, COVID, right? I mean, like, you think about COVID, and it's almost comparable to when we read about history, and things that have gone on in history. I mean, this was a historical time. So people changed, and they wanted different things. And so what was happening was a lot of people were deciding, I don't want to be in the workforce anymore. I want a different kind of job. I don't want a job where I have to go to work anymore, work in the office anymore. I want this, I don't want that. And so there were a lot of people that were making changes during in late 2021, 2022, right? So that was the Great Resignation. People were resigning. Most of those people were, well, I'm not sure exactly the numbers, but I would say from my perspective, most of those people were going to other companies where they could get what they wanted. And you know what happened? It was becoming really, really, really challenging for companies to fill their jobs, because it was basically a candidate's market. It was a market made for anyone looking for a job, anyone considering another job. It was like the perfect time to make a change, right? And so when that was happening, companies were having a hard time filling their jobs. Salaries were going up, right? And so we've never seen a time like this before. I actually got really, really busy. Why? Because when companies have a hard time filling jobs, they need help. And so that's when they'll use an outside firm to get help. So that's kind of stabilized a little bit more, but now we're hearing all these rumblings about the economy, right? Well, it's really strange. So we're seeing big tech and all the layoffs that are happening, but I only see that in big tech. I mean, I'm hearing Amazon and Apple and all these companies talk about layoffs, but I'm not seeing them in other industries. I'm not seeing them in construction. I'm not seeing them in most professional service companies. I'm not seeing it in really in manufacturing companies either, right? A lot of those layoffs took place in one industry. And the truth is that a lot of the jobs that they're laying off, those people will be able to get another job. Why? Because unemployment is still really low compared to what we've seen in history. So I think what's going to happen over the last few months, we've had a lot of job creation. We've had layoffs that were very industry specific, and companies were still having a hard time finding the people that they want. I think that's going to level off, right? I think that's going to level off, and companies are going to start having an easier time finding the talent that they want. But really, in general, I would say that what we're seeing now really looks like a normal labor market. Like we're kind of, last year and the last 3 years have been like unprecedented. We've never had these weird labor markets with unemployment here, then unemployment all the way low, right? And now it's almost like not yet, it's still really low, but it's getting to the point where this is where it usually is, okay? What this means is it might become a little bit harder for people to find jobs because it's going to level out. So what we've seen is a candidates market over the last couple of years, and now it's going to level off. So, it's kind of a little bit of a candidates market, a little bit of a company market, a little bit of both. So what I always say to people looking for jobs, and I'm curious to know what Nicolette has to say, when people are looking for jobs in this kind of economy, where we still have relatively low unemployment and companies are still, needing to fill jobs and there are not as many layoffs. People aren't leaving as quickly. What kind of advice do you give to job seekers?
One of the things that was surprising to me when COVID hit is that my business doubled. And because everybody was tired of their old jobs, they wanted a new job. And I'm thinking, oh, COVID hit. And I had some actual workshops scheduled in person. And I had to cancel all those. So I was down in the dumps, like, oh, my businesses. And all of a sudden, I mean, the orders were coming in like crazy. I just could not believe it. That was actually my best year in getting the clients in because they wanted to turn over a new leaf and really think about it. And so this is what I would say. You still have the opportunity to sit down and think about what you really want to do. That was the benefit of the people that came to me because they had time to really think about it. And I always tell people, before you just get out there and start looking for a job, think about what it is you really want to do. Because at that point, you're not just getting another job, you're actually creating a career, because now it's something that you really want to do. Your heart is in it and you find room to grow. And then it's not so much that you can, now at that point, we were negotiating some good money, y'all. We were negotiating some great money. Now it's leveling off. So we can't go in there with these big, bold, I want this if you want me type of thing. You kind of got to tailor it a little bit back and be willing to negotiate in a not such a, well, I'm going to throw this number out because you're desperate and you need me, you're going to take me. So that's kind of waning. So you want to make sure that you're still showcasing your skill set, your abilities and your talents so that the employer can see the value in what you bring to the table. And one of the things that you need to do, you have to own it. You have to believe it yourself, because a lot of times I see my clients go into these opportunities. I think it's a big I and a little me. No, this is a partnership. I'm bringing my talent and my skills, and then you have something that I need, which by way of salary and benefits. How can we make this work for both of us? So you have to think from that perspective, because when you build that confidence, then you're able to go out there and look for the actual job that you want, secure the interviews, and speak from that perspective, because you should never be scared of any of that if you own it, but you got to take the time to think through it.
Yeah, that's great. That's good advice. Okay, so now let's kind of get to the meat of your big question, and what is it that recruiters want to see? So I'm going to give some perspectives from how my team sees it. Okay. So again, we are looking at it from the point of view of companies who are looking to hire, right? And I'm going to give you some information about how my recruiters are going to interview, and some information about what they're looking for. And then Nicolette is going to fill in all the parts that I'm missing, right? So first of all, there's a lot of people talk about culture fit, okay? That they want to hire people that are a culture fit. Well, I don't like that term, because I don't think it really describes what companies really want, okay? I think what companies are really looking for are either culture adds, people to add to the culture, or even better, people who have similar values, okay? So one of the questions our recruiters ask our clients, the companies, is tell me about your company values, okay? Sometimes you can find this on their website. You can read blogs that the company has put out, but I always want to know, what are your values? Because you're not going to hire people with such vastly different values. And there's a lot of ways to figure out if someone is similar to you. So when you have an idea of what the company's values are, then what my recruiters do is they ask questions to get an idea of how you demonstrate those values, right? So say for an example is one of our company values is doing the right thing, right? So if I was interviewing for people from my company, I would hope that they've maybe done some research to know what our company values are, number one. And number two, I'm going to ask them some questions to get an idea if they kind of live by these values, right? They can demonstrate these values. So one of my questions is going to be, tell me about a time when you have shown that you did the right thing, right? In a situation that might have been where you could have gone this way or that way. You decided to do the right thing. That is a question that I would ask a candidate who is looking to work at my company, right? Because again, I want people who can demonstrate the values that represent my company. Okay, so that's one area is values. And I'm kind of curious, by show of hands, how many of you have, before you've done an interview, had an idea of what the values were for the company that you were interviewing at? A few of you, not many of you, but I think that is one area that can really, really give you an edge. Okay, Nicolette, what are some of your thoughts around culture and values?
Yeah, definitely, because you want to make sure, number one, you're interviewing that company as well. Because what if you read the values? You're thinking, I want a job. And then you read the values, like, you know what? I don't like what they're about. So therefore, you want to make sure that you are aware of what they stand for, because it may not be the same thing you stand for. So I love the fact that it's about cultural values and not necessarily cultural fit, because that's just too broad. The values, because what are your own personal values as a professional? So you need to know those as well and make sure they're in alignment, because when they're asking those questions, they're looking from that lens. Will you be able to align with our values as an individual based on your past experiences? Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay, here's another thing that we look for in candidates. And what I'm really curious about the next couple areas is, Nicolette, how can a candidate demonstrate what I'm about to say, some of these areas, without even before they've gotten in for the interview, right? So one of the areas that we look for in a candidate is passion. We want to see that they have some passion about the work that they're doing, and that they've shown some kind of passion in for the companies they're working for, right? That they really believe in what they're doing and excited about what they're doing and are motivated in what they're doing. So that's one area. And very related to that is commitment. We want to see that candidates have demonstrated commitment to either the area where they're working, the company where they're working. We want to be able to see that, right? Sometimes we can see it on a resume in certain ways. And I want to hear, Nicolette, more about how you would suggest that people demonstrate that even in a resume. We definitely ask a lot of questions around those areas when we're interviewing people for our clients. So Nicolette, if I said a company wants to hire people that are really passionate and committed to what they're doing, how would you tell someone that they can demonstrate that?
Number one, results. If you are a worker bee and you're just doing tasks, then that's all you're completing, and you're not telling me the results of your labor, you're not showing that you're engaged in what you're doing. You're just showing up, collecting the paycheck, and go home. Then I also want to see, do you actually share your knowledge with your peers? Not necessarily always that you're training someone, but if you are training someone, that's great. Are you mentoring someone? Or are you showcasing and sharing it in a meetings or what have you? Because if you learn something that helps the organization or your department, then that means you're engaged. So I want to see those things. And I talk to my clients about that, and also ask them to bring them any kind of successes that they had in the role, even if they said, you know what, I did create a new process because I identified a workflow inefficiency. So I developed a process, and I even did a handbook. So that means you're engaged in the work. But if you're taking your job description and just plopping it into the format of a resume, because there's a different format in a resume than writing about your career as a career story. That's all I usually see, a bunch of tasks. But that's great that you're a worker bee, but companies are not looking for worker bees. They're looking for people who can engage and push the vision and mission forward. So that's what I will look for. And I will also ask my clients for. You have to go beyond the actual job description, job duties, and tell me the results of your labor.
Okay, so what does that look like on a resume? I can tell you that sometimes we'll see things like that on a resume, like it might say develop new process for whatever, or, sometimes what are some examples that you would see on a resume that, kind of highlight what you're talking about? What are some like either sentences or?
Oh, great. So I am pulling up some of my current clients now, and I will give you an example. Okay. So for this person, manage key accounts of 100,000 plus each in annual sales. Key accounts are publicly or privately traded with revenues of $1.1 billion. And then they oversee a $50,000 plus budget, and they took initiative to reduce freight cost by 50% and improve the shipping method.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. By the way, it's interesting because our company, probably about 20% of the people that we help companies hire are in the sales area. And that's
one of yours that you sent me.
What'd you say?
That's one of the clients you sent me.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Because I was going to say, that's what people want to see. They want to see numbers, results, that's interesting. Okay. Another area that we look for, so my team will look for when we screen candidates, we look at their resume, we might do a few questions over LinkedIn or email, right? And then certainly, interviewing. Another area that we are looking for is high EQ. Raise your hand if you've heard the term EQ. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's some hands going up. Yeah. Okay. So EQ stands for emotional quotient. So you've heard of IQ, right? Intellectual quotient, right? You're like measuring how smart you are. Well, there are a lot of companies that say, I don't just need a smart person. I need someone who can relate to people, who's a good leader, who has energy, who can influence other people. Those are all qualities within EQ, right? It's funny because I have one brother and I always said he's the smart one. He's the smart one. I mean, like, okay, he was in all the honor classes growing up. Okay. He did in high school. It was like all the college level classes, but he was still in high school, right? He went to like, the best schools and all that kind of stuff. And I was like a good student, but I wasn't, hitting it out of the park in college classes. Right. But one of the things that I think really helped me and took him a long time to learn was the EQ part, relating to people. Because you have to be able to relate to people in jobs, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. So it could be, how you communicate with people, how you remaining calm under pressure. I probably could work on some of that. How you work as a team, right? That is definitely something that our recruiters are looking for. And so one of the things that we do in interviews to get an idea of whether or not they have high EQ, asking questions that are around those areas that I mentioned. So first of all, I want to talk just for a minute, and we'll talk about it more throughout the presentation. But one of the things that I really believe in for interviewing is called behavioral interviewing. Again, can you raise your hand if you've heard of behavioral interviewing? I'm curious. So behavioral interviewing, what I like about it is it's not just asking you, have you done this? Do you know how to do this? Can you do this? Like basically, yes or no answers. When we ask behavioral interviewing questions, we want to get examples when you did this. Tell me about an experience when you showed this quality. Tell me about a time that you did this. So for high EQ, we might ask the candidates questions such as, tell me about a time that there was a lot of stress going on in the workplace. Maybe you had a big project, I don't know, a lot of stress. How did you respond to that stress? How did you respond to it? Tell me about what was happening, give me an example, and tell me about how you responded to it. And so the candidate is giving me an example, a real life example, right? We ask a lot of questions in our interviews to get examples of when they have demonstrated any of these areas, right? So whether they're soft skills or hard skills, we want to know, tell me about a time that you've demonstrated commitment in your job. And then maybe some follow-up questions around that. So for EQ, I want to get an idea of examples that the candidate has where they've worked well in a team, where they have motivated others during a really stressful time. So those are the kind of questions we're going to ask candidates to really get an idea. Are they going to work well in our company? Nicolette, how do you show some of that before a candidate has gotten to the interview? And then I'm really curious about the interview and how you prepare people for that.
And I pulled up a sample client.
Okay, here
And
we
it's
go.
good. Okay. So one of the things that I did, I went right to because what she was looking for was a job that was actually asking for that. And she has been touted as one of the people who had that, down pat as far as the actual interview, the emotional intelligence. So this is part of her cover letter. I'm excited to submit my name for the role blank. Not only is this role meant for me, but due to my success of driving results-oriented digital technology transformation in the financial space, but the job description mentioned emotional intelligence, in which I am well versed. I not only study it as an imperative to my personal and professional development, but I was also the keynote speaker of on emotional intelligence for the Women's Impact Group. I shared how I use emotional intelligence to gain buy-in from internal and external stakeholders to deliver impactful results. Knowing this role requires EI in addition to the skills, talent, and successes I have gained in my 20-plus year career, I stand ready to transition to this role with minimal training. That's just the opening paragraph.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Okay. And then I went over to when we talk about her resume, and that's just the introduction. So in her resume, I put right at the top, strong emotional intelligence, lead and drive cross-functional teams toward new technology and transformation at a global level. Now, how did I support that? Based on her management feedback. Penny's ability to drive a conversation and communicate clear needs and goals allowed us to define a strategy to get the desired communications from the team. She's results-oriented, so when a task is requested, she would strive for completion at any cost. Penny managed to simplify ERP PMO, that's all technology language, with little supervision or direction, with both her direct manager and VP confident in her running of the space. She applied her strong analytical thinking, emotional intelligence, and ability to drive actions to closure, resulting in great success.
So, Nicolette, let me ask you again. So are you saying that this was on the job description or in the post, it said that this was important, right? Okay. So then the candidate took that and not only created her cover letter with information and examples on EQ, but also included examples in her resume.
Keywords, bring it, tell the story. And then when I used her management feedback, they helped tell the story. It's better for them to brag on her than she was interviewing internally. So it made sense to put her management feedback in there because all they got to do is pick up the phone and call. Did she said you said this? Yep, I did. And so therefore it's right there. So you have to tell the story. So it goes beyond just a regular resume. If you're not speaking the same language of the actual job opportunity, they're going to bypass you. So you want to come out basically come out the gate swinging. So you want to put it out front and center. This is what I bring to the table.
Okay. So we're going to take a break for just a minute, not a break, but just kind of a pause from us talking. Right. And I want to ask the group, I want to ask everyone on here, and how many people are on this, Jackie, right now, or Jamie?
86.
86 people. So we're bound to get a couple volunteers. So I want one or two volunteers to tell me about a time that they demonstrated teamwork, that they were a good team player at work. Okay. So number one, remember, being a good team player is something most companies are looking for in candidates. And number two, You're going to be giving us an example, because that's what companies want. They don't want to hear, yes, I'm a good team player. Well, how do I know you're a good team player? Well, let me tell you about a time I was a good team player. So raise your hand if you want to share a time when you demonstrated strong teamwork in a job, or if it wasn't a job, it could be in a school situation, school or job. Tell me about a time you demonstrated a good team player. Oscar, tell me about a time you demonstrated teamwork.
Well, it was about several years ago. It was about 5:45 p.m. and we had to leave at 6 p.m. And one of my coworkers messed up one database. So he deleted all of the records from the day. And they asked us to stay and help put everything back in the database. So we stayed about until midnight that day. And that's how we all work together to get that fixed.
Wow, that was like a perfect example. That was a perfect example. Okay, Michael, tell me about a time you demonstrated teamwork in a job.
Hello, my name is Michael. Thank you for getting that right. So this wasn't a job per se, it was just high school ROTC, but I was a cadet first lieutenant, special officer 4. I was tasked with planning and executing the military ball for that year. So I was in charge of a committee of other officers, and I was delegating positions based on each person's skill set, as well as working with another committee and making sure that everything on our end was being taken care of at the same time that everything on their end was being taken care of. Doing weekly and daily check-ins to see how progress was going, essentially like a data analytics sprint, just to make sure that everything was going on track until eventually the ball went off without a hitch.
That's like a really, really good example. Awesome. Carol, did I say it right, Carol? Carol, do you want to give an example?
Yes. So an example is was with a colleague. I was working in a company where they have office in London and New York. So I was in New York. So one of my colleagues from London was given an assignment to track some things that the client required. But then what happened is that we had to look the announcement of something coming out, and it wasn't by the time she had to leave, it still wasn't there. So I decided, suggested that, okay, when you leave, I can pick up from there. And then if I see anything, I would just, write it down and send you the information that I got about it. So you wouldn't have to stay over past 10 p.m. at night, just waiting for it. So that's one example.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good example also. So one of the areas that recruiters are looking for are these areas where they may or may not be listed in a job description, right? Sometimes people say they're soft areas. So passion for the job and high EQ, teamwork and commitment, right? All those areas are, sometimes they're on a job description and sometimes they're not. But one way to really know if there are things that are really important to a company, do some research their website. Remember, you're also wanting to look for their values, right? Research their website, research their social media, see how they interact with each other, right? Another area that is definitely looked for by recruiters is communication skills, right? So really good, strong communication skills is important in many jobs. Even if you sit in front of a computer the entire day, it's still going to be important. So I want to ask Nicolette, how can candidates demonstrate really strong communication skills? And then maybe we can actually go through, again, a few examples around that using some of what you're going to explain.
Okay, so one of the things that I would always say is don't be silent in the room. We want to hear your voice. As a leader in corporate America, if I have someone that's on a call that's silent, I'm curious as to why. I want to hear your voice because you have ideas as well. And don't think anything that you say may not be the best thing in the world. It doesn't matter. We all make mistakes in what we say. But the fact is that you're sharing. So one of the first things I want you to do is share your thoughts, share your ideas, and do it so that they can hear your voice. And especially those leaders who are in the room listening. And then you're going to help someone based on your idea because they may not have even thought of that, but you have. So don't keep it to yourself. And anytime you have an opportunity to present something, take that opportunity. And even if you're an introverted type of person, because I hear that sometimes I'm introverted, I'm just not that outgoing, but basically you can make an impact one at a time. Go to that individual peer and talk to that peer and communicate. Talk to your manager and communicate to that manager. Maybe it's only 2 people you want to get on the call and be afraid of not speaking in front of this many people here today. So you still can make an impact, but you have to use your voice. And the way that you also can do that, don't be afraid of taking a course. Because again, with the texting world today, people have gotten out of the art of communication. And you don't have to be this mega speaker in order to communicate. But I will recommend that you take some courses to help you with your communication skills. And of course, you got LinkedIn that has tons of opportunities out there for you to take a course, and YouTube. And I always talk about YouTube University. It's free. Go out and find someone who teaches on that. And so you can learn some of those different things. And the last thing I would say to help your communication skills is to read. Read, the art of reading. Your communication and your language and your diction increases and improves by just reading.
Does Audible count?
Well, Audible can because you're hearing the words as well. It's training your brain on the concepts and how to communicate those concepts. And they're saying the words so you can repeat after them as well. And one of the things, I'm going to tell y'all something funny about me. Okay, now I have a hard time saying doll, baby doll, baby doll, or something like that. Okay, I'm from Chicago, I'm from the hood, so I say doll. And this is something that just followed me forever. And it wasn't until one of my friends, she's my best friend, she said, "Why do you say that? I'm tired of you saying that." I said, "What are you talking about? It is a baby doll." And she said, "It's not a baby doll. It's a doll." I was like, "What the heck?" But I grew up in the hood in Chicago, and that's what we used to say. So I had to learn that as a professional, and it's okay. So don't be ashamed. I use that story all the time because I used that, y'all, for so long until she told me the right way to say it. So think about those words that you're hearing by listening to the Audible and also just simply reading something to help your diction, help your language, and also not just the language, the words that you can use in place of other things. I'm a thesaurus and a dictionary guru, especially when I'm writing for my clients. I'm looking for different ways to say different things because language is how you communicate it, not just from your voice, but also how you're writing it as well.
Okay, so if somebody is preparing for an interview, Nicolette, what are 2 to 3 things that you would tell them to remember in an interview in terms of communication? And then let's pick a couple questions and see if we can get some people to share. Okay.
Okay. So, one of the things, okay. One of the first thing I would do is not share fluff. Going back to what Jolene said, I want an example. I don't want you to tell me what you think shoulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda happened. No, that's telling me your philosophy. I don't want to hear your philosophy. I want to know what you did, an actual time that you did something and your result from that. So don't get caught up in so much of the story that you don't end a result. So maybe that's number 2. Think about a situation or story that occurred in your work that could apply to any of those competencies that they're asking in the job description. So that's a backwards way. If they're asking for several competencies, make sure you're focusing on those competencies. So when you're answering those questions, you're hitting on those competencies. And then you always want to make sure that you don't get the dreaded question, "So what happened next?" That means you have to be strong in giving a result that goes back to your resume. What is the result from your labor? Not just that you labored, the result. So you want to tell them the story. You want to talk about your tasks or actions. Yes, I'm talking about the STAR method. Then you want to make sure that you're telling a result from your actions, because someone like me in corporate America, as I'm interviewing you, I'm writing out, and of course I have a disadvantage because I do this also, but it's like STAR. And if we cannot fill all of those things out, you get a lower score in your interview. And it's not have anything to do with that you couldn't do the job. It's just that you didn't communicate it effectively so that they can tell you can do the job.
Okay, so tell us again what STAR stands for.
STAR is your situation or your story
Okay.
that you're going to tell as an example to the question that's in alignment with the competencies that's in the job description. Your T is basically now you got to think about the task that I need to do in order to resolve this issue or problem.
Okay.
And
so
then
start-
the A, and then the A is actions. Now, task is just like a checklist. Well, I need to do this, I need to do that. So these are the tasks. We can list out tasks all day long, our to-do list, but we don't do nothing sometimes, right? So what action did you take? So that's when I want to see the A. So, okay, that's nice that you knew what you had to do, but did you do it? So actions. So what actions did you take? And then the R are the results. Tell me how you were the shero or the hero. How did you turn this situation around? And that's when you put that pretty bow on it so that they know you took up, they're looking at also your critical thinking pattern. Are you critically thinking through what it is that you want to say so you can communicate it effectively? Because, you know, sometimes in these meetings, you don't have a lot of time to go into a long tantrum. You got to just say what you have to say and get it going. So you want to talk about your situation, your story. You want to talk about the tasks, the steps that you're taking to do that. Then you want to talk about the actions that you executed. And then you want to talk about your result, that you how you became the shero or hero in that story.
Okay, so what's so interesting here is when our recruiters on my team are talking to potential candidates that we may or may not be sending to the client, right? And we're looking for pretty much what you just said, right? So when we ask them a question, tell me about a time when you let's think of another competency. Jackie or Jamie, tell me about a couple competencies that this group will show up if this group were interviewing for a job. What are a couple things that always show up in a job description in the area of data analytics?
Yeah, I would think it definitely has to do with analytical skills.
Yeah, for sure. And also probably attention to detail.
And communication ability to tell a story based on what they see in the data.
That's really good. Okay, so when our recruiters are saying, tell me about a time that you had to communicate a situation to your boss, right, based on the information that was given to you, right? And my recruiters are going to want to hear about, well, what was the situation, right? What was the task, just like Nicolette said, what did they do? And what ended up happening? What was the result? Okay, so let's, who wants to volunteer and give us, using as close as possible, and we're all in learning mode here, to the STAR method as explained by Nicolette, situation or the story, you know, what was the situation, task, action, results. Results are so important, right? Because like Nicolette said, if they're like, well, what happened? You didn't tell them what the results were. So tell me about a time that you were asked to communicate something important to your boss, right? What was happening? And, you know, share this with us. Who wants to volunteer? And if you want to change it up, if you want to pick something different that you've experienced, like tell me about a time you were, you know, that you had to work under pressure, or tell me about a time that you had to communicate really, really challenging information to your boss. You can choose it. What we want to see are examples, because this is what recruiters want to see. They want to know that when you answer their questions, that you can communicate the information clearly. Situation, here's everything I needed to do. Here's what I did. Here was the results.
Mhm.
Who wants to share an example? And you can pick the question that makes sense for your job.
Lately, there was a situation where company-wide, they required that folks in technology should have at least a cloud certification. But now, they go to locations where we could obtain the actual links and baby steps on how to register for those certifications became a challenge because people were working on different things at different times and the deadline was quite close. So what I did was to create a little short note, including the actual link to the location where people can register. And basically I replicated what I did to register and also to prepare for the test. You know, so I had the link there. I had the individual's email to contact if we had any issues, and then also included some YouTube videos that I used to prepare for my own you know, and also how to apply for the voucher from the company. So with that actually helped to reduce the stress on folks and actually finding out how to go about registering and passing the exam.
Great.
Mhm.
That's a good one. Okay, let's do another one. And then we're going to go into, after we do one more example, Nicolette, let's talk. So we're going to do one more example, but I'm setting you up here. How to tailor your resume and LinkedIn profile. So first,
Okay.
let's go to Biratawit. I know I'm pronouncing it wrong, so please help me.
You're perfect. It's Bruktawit.
Bruktawit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry for not turning on my camera. I'm not in a good position to turn on. Okay. So I was ordered by my boss or my manager to work on a dashboard for our client and then to present for him before we submit to our client. So I have been given some period of time to work on that. So I make ready all the data set and I prepare the dashboard and then prepare also a presentation for my manager. I showed him and he gave me some feedbacks on it. And I added those feedbacks and also sent him again for the corrected ones. Then when we finalize and present it to the clients, they were really amazed on what I have and my manager did on it.
Ah, that was good. That was good. Nicolette?
Well,
Did you
good
like
deal.
that?
Yes. And what I wanted to go over a quick one that before and after that I just did recently for a college student, if you don't mind, so I can show
Yeah.
them the difference. And one of the things I do with my clients, I have them to answer some questions and in written form, and then I revamp them, and then we practice them virtually so they can have a recording so they can go back home. And so one of the things I wanted him to do, well, I gave him a question. We all make mistakes we wish we could take back. Tell me about a time you wish you handled a situation differently, and what would you do if you can handle it differently today? Now, sometimes you'll get those 2-3 part questions, and you have to keep in your mind, listen carefully, and think through what they're asking. And I give a tip, like this is a tricky question. I recommend thinking of a time where you were able to rectify a situation. Doing this, change it from the wish I could have, should have, would have answer to I did something to make it better. How you behaved is what they're looking for. So show you behaved in a way to make the situation better. So this is his answer. There was one time I was asked to do something very simple. I was asked by my manager to take an existing SharePoint structure and rearrange it to make it easier for the team to share the information. I was very reluctant and resistant to that task because there was a part of me that thought it was a waste of time and I had more important things on my plate to complete. I ended up taking longer. Actually, this is my emotional intelligence person. I'm sorry. I ended up taking longer than needed to complete my task, which was disappointing to my manager. And this disappointment was reflected in her performance review. I wish I could have handled it differently by just completing a task, regardless of my thoughts behind the importance of it. If it was important enough for my manager to ask me to do it, then I should have just did it and not judge its importance. I would have handled this task differently today, regardless of how simple it was and unimportant. More complex does not always equate more important. So I changed it around. I said, okay, I learned not to only keep my personal thoughts out of an ask, and that a more complex assignment does not always equate to it being more important. So I came out the gate swinging with that, right? Then she said, here's the situation. There was a time I was asked to do something very simple. I was asked by my manager to take an existing SharePoint structure and rearrange it to make it easier for the team to find the information. I was reluctant and resistant to do the task because there was a part of me that thought it was a waste of time and I had more important things on my plate to do. And because this was an action-oriented thing, so we didn't do any tasks, but what she did, I embarked upon completing the task, which ended up taking longer than needed to complete the task, which was disappointing to my manager. And truth be told, it disappointed me too. But this was due in part to my hesitancy and reluctancy to complete the task. Now, here's how she became the winner. I wish I would have handled the task differently today, regardless of how simple and important it seemed. I learned if it's important enough for my manager to ask to complete a task, I will complete it without hesitation, as it is not my place to judge its importance, and it's not fair to say a more complex task should equate to being more important. So I turned it around because she was really beating herself up. I said, yeah, you want to learn from the lesson, but you don't want to also show that, you know what, I'm not doing what my manager say. No, let's do it in a different manner. So how do you say what you want to say? Okay, so I wanted to just give an example of how you can think through your example to make it more impactful when you are still the winner. Okay, so now for the resumes. So so one of the things I want you to really think about, if you're still using a resume that says objective statement, then that's very 1970s, 1980s.
Get rid of it.
Get rid of
You
it.
don't even look at it.
Yeah. It's like, if there's a resume that's out there to send an objective statement, it's not going to get picked up at all because we already know what the objective is. It's to get the job. So you don't have to state the obvious, but instead you want to write a professional summary that summarizes what they're looking for and how you have the skill set that will be supported in the body of the document for what they're looking for. So think about maybe 5 to 6, maybe even sometimes 7 short sentences to show the impact that you can make. And if you have numbers, it's even better that you show those numbers. Sometimes my salespeople, they have made millions of dollars. I come out the gate and talk about the fact that they made this impact and made this many $1 million for organizations. And if they've been a salesperson for a long time, I add it all up. So it's even bigger impact. So meaning that they showed it. And then after you do that, you want to then put in your resume the competencies. So a lot of times the jobs are asking for specific competencies. So you want to have an area in your resume for keyword research or search for when they're finding you with those keywords and making sure that you can support it. Don't just put it in there, but you can't prove it, because we don't want you to get the job and they walk you out the door because you didn't prove it. But you want to make sure that you're including the keywords in there that you actually can do. So your competencies shows that you're competent, or even your skills. You want to show those things up the top, because if you think about a resume, the first, let me see, I'm just going to show you a piece of paper. So most times they want to read this and then they're going to go to the next one. They're not going to necessarily go down here first. So if you capture them with that top part of the actual resume, then you're going to be able to get them to be in a call pile so they can pass that on to the hiring manager to read the rest of the resume. You want to make it through that 3 to 6 second view. So when you do have it set up that way first, then you want to start talking about your experience that aligns with what they're asking for. So you want to put in some bullets to showcase that you got those skills. So you want to kind of bullet it under the actual job. And if you're writing these big paragraphs and just taking the job description and put it as bullets, that's not necessarily what they're looking for. Because how many of you all know that jobs change over the years? So just because you were hired for that job, you're probably not doing those same tasks anymore. So I want to hear about what you're doing now and also the results. So the numbers are better. Quantitative bullets are much better. But if you have qualitative bullets, and when I say qualitative, it means that if you're a support person, you still help your leader to get the results. So you could talk about how you're helping them. So that's qualitative results. So you want to talk about what is the result for my labor. And then when it goes all the way through your actual experience, if you have any kind of certifications that are in alignment with your expertise and with the job, you want to showcase those. Sometimes people forget about that. And if you are a person that does a lot of volunteer, you may not be in leadership in your current role, but if you're a leader in your volunteerism, you can showcase that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so most of the people here have some really good certifications, right? So how can they, like, where should it be and how can they showcase it so it gets the attention it deserves? Because here, I mean, this whole group, they're upskilling themselves, right? And they're taking classes. Many of them are working at the same time. So how can they really show, you know, the skills, the you know, certifications, and the fact that they're continuously doing this?
Yeah. And what they can do, I like to put it prominently at the top of the resume, depends on what it is that they're doing. And then if it's not enough room, I also like to show it at the bottom of the resume with only certifications. So you can do it in two different ways. It all depends on the actual strategy that you're looking to do that with. And that's it. I'm going to share my screen real quick and show you an example, if you don't mind. These are important for him. So I wanted to make sure, let me put my little space there, make sure that he has all of this in there. So it's important, not just the MSN, but all of this. And this is a late bloomer. He worked at the cable company and he did some work in like a plant before he overheard his wife speaking about becoming a nurse and the impact for a nurse. So he went back to school and got all of this nursing experience. And now he's going for another opportunity. But this is what I did. I put it right here. And when I'm talking about your professional summary, this is what I'm talking about. See this 17,000 students that he had oversight. Then here's some of his key highlights. Here's his area of expertise and key competencies. Then I supported all the way through his resume, showcasing not necessarily where he worked, but the fact that he is a nurse. So that's another strategy. If it's a big company you work for, you want to put that out there like a Amazon or a Google or something like that, I will probably put that up there because it's recognized. But what's recognized for him is the fact that he has all his experience as a nurse. And did I talk about all of the stuff that he was a cable man? Because it didn't matter. It doesn't matter. So therefore, what's the strategy behind what is he doing? And so that's one of the things that you want to do. And let me go to Ms. Taylor real quick. Here's Ms. Taylor. Internal marketing communication strategist. What is she looking to do? Corporate messaging, content creation, corporate storytelling. This is your client that you sent me, Jolene. And it's all in here about what she did. I just read all this stuff to you. Took initiative to reduce freight costs. This is what she's doing. And all of her stuff, freelance event, I brought out everything that was so important to what she wanted to actually do. So she could actually get the job that she's looking for. So you want to make sure it's all about strategy. And then let me see who else I can show real quick. Oh, that's a stage. Oh, let me do Astasia's because she has a lot of great stuff too. So I'm going to download her so you can see. Is that the word? I'd rather do this one. It looks better from PDF. And so these are some of the things that she does. She's bringing all of her skill set, and this is considered a master resume. And when I say a master resume, here's all her certifications and trainings. So for her job, what she's looking for, she don't have to showcase them at the top. She can, because what we will do is put the CPCU, AINS, ACS, and FLMI there. And I can speak that language because I'm in the insurance industry. So these are all good for the insurance industry. But the fact that she works for State Farm Insurance, that's prominent enough. Yeah. Fortune 39, multi-billion-dollar corporation. And so therefore from this, she could just tweak this and apply for the different jobs that she wants. And y'all see there's a bunch of numbers in here, right? Numbers. All positioning her for what she's going to do. Lead, 16%, all of this stuff. So that's the difference with an actual resume and what you're trying to showcase. And then you want to make sure that you carry that same cadence over to your LinkedIn. Now, the difference with a LinkedIn is that it is social media. It's professional, but it's social media. So I want you to refrain from taking your resume and plopping it into LinkedIn, because it's not the same. You want to talk from a perspective of what value can you bring. So it's okay to use it from an I, me, or my perspective, and not necessarily just showcasing it from implied me or my, which is the resume that does that.
Okay, so LinkedIn should be from the perspective of I, me, or my.
Yes. And if you currently have your resume as a PDF upload on LinkedIn, I'm going to highly recommend you delete that. Because here's the reason why. And I told a lot of people just earlier today, I spoke for the women WBNC or something like that, one women group today, because you're not having a conversation, inviting them to have a conversation with you, because they could download your resume and then keep moving about their business. But I want you to entice them to want to have a conversation with you. So you want to make sure that you have a good enough profile so that they can invite you to have a conversation, which is the actual interview. So it's all about strategy of how you're positioning yourself to get those opportunities, because you want to tell a good career story. Because I always tell people, everybody likes a good story, but why not tell yours? And if you're not landing an actual interview with your resume, it's not you, it's your resume. And the goal of a resume is not to land a job. The goal of a resume is to land an interview. You as an individual, for the interview prep, land the job. And the more prepared you are, the more likely you are to land the job. And if you don't, you're probably going to get that call back because you did so well in that interview that they're going to consider you for other opportunities. And that's the end goal. Now, the resume's job is to tell such a compelling enough story that they invite you into the interview so you could tell the rest of the story. Does that make sense? Yes, Jane.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask, what if you happen to hold a master's in a totally different field from the that you're applying? How would that credential go? Like, would you put it at the top, or I'm just curious about that.
It all depends. If you have like a MS or an MA or something like that instead of an MBA. MA. Okay, so I probably would not put it at the top, because if you're not going to go into that field, I will just make sure that it's in your education as the first thing. And if you have an associate's degree, but you also have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, there's no need to even mention the associates anymore. So you could just eliminate that and just show that you have the bachelor's and the master's. So yeah, it will be a strategy that I would have to figure out how we can really place it. But just on the surface, I would probably put that at the bottom and not necessarily next to your name, because it's not something that you're going to utilize.
You know, when I'm looking at a resume, even though that master's may be in a different area, so Nicolette is right, doesn't need to be at the top, but still it tells me something about the candidate. And if I have a candidate that has, education, learning, commitment, all of that actually tells me a lot that I can then communicate to my client. So I agree, it doesn't need to be at the top, but a master's degree, I would want to see, even if it's in a different area. One of the things that you said, Nicolette, and I'm going to say one more thing, and I know we don't have a lot of time left. We only have like 12 minutes, but one of my, just your top 3 preparing for an interview. I'm going to tell you mine and then you tell me yours. Okay. So what I would love to tell candidates here before you come talk to my recruiters, please do this. Number 1, research the company, understand what they do, understand their clients, understand their customers, research their company. Number 2, understand their values. What is it like to work there? Now, you're not going to get all of that information from social media and the website. And those are, definitely questions you can ask in interviews. What is it like to work here? But certainly do some research on not just the technical aspects of what they do, but also the value. What is it like to work there? What do they believe in, right? And then the third thing you absolutely have to do to prep to be ready is to have examples ready to go that you can use in different situations. Tell me about a time you were a great team player, can also be used as, tell me a time that you were
a leader.
Great leader. Exactly. So come prepared with some examples that you can plug and play when they ask you questions. Those are my 3. What are yours?
Oh gosh, those are awesome. And what I would add to that, if you cannot find something on the internet that you have a question about, then that's when LinkedIn becomes your friend. You want to connect with someone in the organization who can really tell you what I call the TI truth about that organization, because they're inside of it. And why not connect with someone who's in the role or similar role where you want to ask questions? And I always tell my clients, invite them to a virtual coffee or tea, or maybe they like to drink Pepsi in the morning. I don't know. But then you only asking for 15 minutes of their time. Most people will give you that, and just ask them about the environment of where you're going to be working. So ask and take that next step. And then you have a cheerleader on the inside. Oh, I spoke to this person. They connected with me and they asked these great questions, and they can carry that message forward for you. And number 2, practice, practice, practice. Do not wing it. I can tell, I could smell a winger a mile away.
I agree.
They just show up, because you're asking that organization to give you a salary, benefits, PTO, all of this kind of stuff. And you haven't even taken time to prepare. That's, to me, that's not valuable of your time, nor it is of mine. So I want you to make sure that you're practicing those things. And I can't emphasize the examples. I mean, I say create an example bank. And what I always tell my clients, do an example bank, because you all have experiences. Even my college students, I always go from the perspective of, you did projects in school. How did you get them to do it? And you not be the only one doing the projects, and they get the A like you got. What did you do? So those are the things I talk through. So you do have experiences, and it's not always work experiences. You may have had something that was in your life that you had to organize. Maybe your house burned down, but you had to go and talk to all of these people to get that organized and make that project go smooth. Maybe you're taking care of an elder one, and you know what? You have to organize your schedule in order to meet the demands at your home, as well as the demands at your job. So don't just stop about work examples. Life examples that you do, because we don't want to hire dull worker bees. So we want to make sure that you are showing us that you are a well-rounded person holistically. So yes.
That was great. An example bank, and come prepared with questions. I wanted to repeat that because that was like brilliant. M has a question.
Yes.
Hi, I apologize. I'm not able to turn my camera on, but I have a question when it comes to relationship with recruiter. Obviously, I do not have one recruiter that I work with. I work with multiple recruiters. And sometimes when you ask, what is, you do the research, you go on Glassdoor, you see reviews, or you recommend LinkedIn, and you read some, posting they have. Anyways, when you ask for some recruiters, hey, what are they looking for? What are the, even after an interview, is there feedback, or how can I have that open relationship with a recruiter without not being intimidated or afraid to ask questions that could help me with the interview process or the next level?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to make clear is that recruiters represent the job, right? So like our recruiters, you can ask for feedback about an interview you did with them about a certain job, right? Because basically they're spending all of their time trying to find the right person for specific jobs. So yeah, that makes sense that you have gotten to know different recruiters, because they are helping companies fill certain positions. So recruiters are not finding jobs for people. Recruiters are finding people for companies, for jobs, for specific jobs, right? The kinds of people that help with the whole job transition and career and all that kind of stuff, those are career coaches, job coaches. It's really what Nicolette does, right?
Yeah.
There's probably a few different titles, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because recruiters, from what I understand, recruiters, they really don't have time, because there's no financial tie for them to go to that level to help you that much. They'd rather you push you over to someone whose expertise in getting people prepared.
It's not even just financial, but if we were helping a candidate and we then sent that candidate to our client, that would be perceived as like a conflict of interest, right?
That's
so
true.
I mean, I could give general feedback anytime to anybody, but if it's about a certain job, I have to be kind of careful because you know, we're getting paid by the client. So
and it's time consuming, because I hear from my recruiter friends too, that do general recruiting, is that they get so many requests and inundated that it can actually overtake their job of actually recruiting when they're answering so many candidates, and they can't do it because it's not just that one job that they're recruiting for several jobs. So you have to think about their time. So don't get offended if they can't get back to you. Sometimes they just can't. And it's kind of hard for them to say particular because they're passing you on, and sometimes they don't know exactly why the organization did not select you. So it's kind of hard to say.
Well,
and it's,
the one thing I will add is I don't mind if a candidate follows up with me and is like, okay, how did that go? And did I get feedback and blah, blah, blah. No problem. In fact, sometimes like if a candidate sent us their resume and we didn't get back to them and they followed up a day or 2 or 3 or whatever later, and they're like, hey, did you get my resume? I actually don't mind that because we get so many resumes from so many candidates. Follow up, not a problem. What's hard is okay, now can you help me find a job? Well, that's the hard part. Follow up is great. Asking for feedback is great. Just it's kind of hard. Question: How do you negotiate? How do you negotiate your?
That's a whole
different thing. It's like a whole nother hour. How do you negotiate your compensation as an entry to mid-level without feeling intimidated to take a low ball? Also, avoid sounding demanding. First of all, know what the market, know what's happening in the market, guys. Do some research. Super important to know what are people in that job in your geographic area for that size company, because a large company is going to pay differently than a teeny tiny company.
Right.
And, New York is going to pay different than Florida maybe, or something like that, right? So really do your research before you, go in saying this is what I need to make, What would you say to that, Nicola?
Yeah, I would definitely say that as well. And I always tell people to go in with a range and never accept the first offer. A lot of times we're just so happy to get the job that we just take whatever they give us. There's room for negotiation. So you want to see and try your hand at negotiating and think about what your range is and the why. Don't just ask for money, just ask for money. You got to have a reason, a compelling reason on why you feel you are worth it. And so if that comes through knowing your value, knowing what you bring to the table, and how do you differentiate yourself so that they see, I want to make that additional investment because I need this person because of X, Y, and Z.
That's really good. That's really, really, really important.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Any other questions? I see 13
We
comments.
take one more question.
Let's see. Example pay, come prepared.
Oscar.
Oh, thank you for putting my website out there, Jamie. That's my website. Also, I got a YouTube channel that I share a lot of this stuff on too. If you all go out there, it's at the Get Hired Strategist. And I do a show every Monday at 5:15 that's broadcasted out to LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Facebook that I share a lot of nuggets on. But if you want to make an investment so I can transform you from a job applicant into a job candidate so you can land the job of your dreams and create a career that rocks, then you will hire me and I will make sure that happens for you. Thank y'all so much.
Nicolette is an amazing speaker. Her YouTubes are phenomenal. There's like just a chock full of information. Oscar, do you want to ask, I think you have a question?
Yes, I do. It's a quick question. I love my job. I love everything about my job. My colleagues, my boss, everything is perfect except my salary. I have read in so many articles that when they ask you, why do you want to change jobs, is the last thing that you can say. So what would you suggest me
That's a good one.
to do in that case?
Oh, we baby. See, I would have to know your whole situation because we would have to develop a strategy on the reason why you're asking. So I would have to know more about the players. I would have to know more about the organization itself. And then I would have to see how you're fitting in that and see what you have done. So I basically would have to pick your brain in order to come up with a strategy so you can feel confident in going and ask for that money. But you don't want to just ask for money because you saw it out there. It's got to be a little bit more meat to that. And because then you're going to present it in such a way that they can't say no, or you get into a negotiation. Then I help you figure out those negotiation points that you want as well. So it all depends, but it can happen. Oh, yes. If you don't ask, you never know. But if you feel you deserve more money, there's a way to ask for that additional money. And it's so many different, I got so many creative ways to get y'all what y'all need. That's probably my favorite part outside of writing, because I'm such a nerd, but I love the money part because I love getting y'all that money.
Oh my God, do not talk to any of my employees. No,
okay, no, I won't. But the clients you send me, they know I get that money. But it's just creative. People don't think creatively on what they can do, and that's the thing. It's about you got to think outside the box.
Hey, Mike, one more question. And he's had his video on the whole time, so we are not passing over Michael at all.
Yes.
Thank you. This is a quick question. I've just heard kind of both sides on this, but what would y'all say is the preferred length of a resume? What's like the max you can have? What is the least you can have?
That's a good one.
I love it. I have an ebook that people join my email list for that's called Busting the One-Page Resume Myth. And I say it all depends. Now, if I have an executive who comes to me with a 7-page resume, yes, I've had it. I'm like, no, we are not sending that anywhere. I'm glad you kept a bibliography of all your stuff. We are not about to send that anywhere. So it all depends on the strategy and what you're looking for. Now, I'm not going to say a 1-page resume is all you need. It may be something that all you need. I'm going to give you an example of an executive. He owned his own company for 30 some years. So he was selling the company and just wanted to be a consultant. So he said, Nicola, I only work for myself. So I don't have all these different jobs. So we made a 1-page impactful resume just for him because he didn't work for anybody else. So I won't say it blanket. It depends on what you're trying to portray. And so it could be 2 pages. Now, if you have a page and you got a stingy part of the second page, you better reduce down to 1 page. But if you have enough to fill up 2 pages and it's impactful, I want to make sure that it's something that you can use. I'm not going to put stuff in there just to put stuff in there. So it all depends on what is the message that you're trying to convey.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Jamie.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We've had at least 94 people that have come and joined us at some point throughout the night. So
that's amazing.
Nicolette, Jolene, thank you so much
for having me.
Night. We appreciate your time, all of your knowledge, and your just willingness to help us all out. So thank you. And thank you to the Colaberry community for making time for this as well. So thank you, everyone. So go out and kill it in your job searches.
Thank you. And thank you, Jolene, for inviting me. And thank you for having me.
Oh my God. Do you see how I couldn't have done this without Nicolette? Her perspective.
And she was like, I know this is last minute, but I'm like, I said, okay, let me check my calendar. No worries. No worries. Glad to be here.
Her perspective is absolutely key. All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Jamie. Thank you, Jackie. It was so nice to meet you. And everyone, you got this. This is great. First of all, I just looked up all the things that you learn at the school, and I have 3 sons, and I want them all to learn it. So that's important stuff for the business community. That is really important. But good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay. Please do.
Yeah. Connect with us.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank
you so much. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye. Have a great night.